Greetings and welcome to the Animal Wellness Podcast, the official podcast of Animal Wellness Action. Hi, I'm your host, Joseph Grove. On this show, we talk about animals from the perspective of people who care about them and have the ability to improve their lives by influencing culture and supporting laws and regulations accordingly. To stay up to date with all of our news and information, subscribe to this podcast, receive our free newsletters, and more, visit animalwellnessaction.org. Before we get into the show, I want to say a couple of things. First, Giving Tuesday. Thank you to everyone listening to this podcast who helped with our Giving Tuesday fundraising. We had a $25,000 match. We were able to meet that match. So it turned out to be by far the biggest day in the history of our organization. We run a very lean machine here at animalwellnessaction.org. We don't even have a headquarters, right? So all of your dollars go as much as possible, very much toward the advocacy of better lives for animals. So I really want to say thank you to all of that, all of those donations we received. So thank you very much. And then just a couple of auditory notes. One of our guests, you may hear her bird. What kind of bird is it, Jessica?
Quaker parrot, and her name is Brody B. Chipkin.
All right. Well, I'm not going to try and repeat the name, but you will hear the bird in the background, perhaps. And then, Scott, I moved recently to downtown Louisville. I'd been living for years out in the rural part of the state, and I'm right now in the middle of downtown. And I didn't realize that my apartment is right on the way to the major emergency room here in the city. So invariably during a show, you'll hear sirens. You may hear the chopper in the background airlifting some poor guy who sawed off his arm while trying to get a Christmas tree, steaming past, sirens ablazing in the background. Yeah, I know. It's
well. I appreciate those heads up. We've got Jessica with her bird. We've got Joseph with the sirens. Just so you know, I live on a hillside above downtown Sutherland, Oregon. And I'm surrounded by 840 acres of forest, and there's a large family of coyotes that live in these woods. And what happens here is we get the sirens from downtown, which get picked up by the coyotes, who start howling and yipping and yapping because of the sirens. And then every dog in Sutherland, Oregon hears the coyotes, and then they start. So if that happens, I don't know what we're going to do. We may just have to turn the whole podcast over to that kind of nonsense.
Yeah. So yeah, any patience on the part of our listeners as they suffer through the various auditory maladies we're going to foist upon them would be appreciated. So thank you for all of that. As is our custom, we start off each show with a legislative update from Marty Irby. He's our executive director and our chief lobbyist in Washington. Marty, what's going on up there on the Hill?
Well, this may be one of our final legislative reports for the 117th Congress and the year 2022. We continue to work on the FDA Modernization Act that passed the Senate by unanimous consent back on September 29th and has passed the House in different form once. That's not enough to send it to the president's desk yet. We're trying to get the Senate bill, a standalone bill, passed through the House of Representatives on what they call the suspension calendar so that it can go to the president's desk, or get the legislation included in the final year-end spending bill if that happens this Congress. We don't really know, but I do think with some of the dynamics of members leaving, we will likely see that get done and signed into law as well. We're also continuing to work on the Bear Protection Act. That legislation is also the Bear Poaching Elimination Act in the Senate, has a different name. The Senate bill went through a process last week of what they call hotlining. That's where they actually send the bill out and ask if they can pass it, and if anyone objects or puts a hold on the bill. We had 3 holds placed on that bill. We do not know who the members of Congress are at this time. So we're still going to keep working to try to get that bill passed and signed into law. It addresses the trade in bear gallbladders because the Chinese government has been promoting the use of bear bile as a treatment for COVID-19 with no scientific basis since the very beginning of COVID. And it's a terrible, terrible injustice what's happening to these bears, and a terrible waste on top of that, because they simply raise them and kill them only for this very, very small gallbladder that they have. And they don't really use the rest of the bear parts at all. So it's a terrible injustice and terrible waste. I don't know if we'll get that done or not, but we're going to keep trying. And then I think we're probably on everything else set. That's probably going to wind us up for the 117th Congress. We'll have a few more priorities in the year-end spending bill. That'll be, the increased funding for enforcement of the Horse Protection Act, maintaining the horse slaughter defund that's been in place for a better part of 12 or 14 years. And we'll keep pressing forward to the 118th Congress, where you're going to see a lot of new bills introduced and some new priorities. We'll fill you in on about that in the coming few weeks.
Thank you for that, Marty. I appreciate it. Good work as always. Thank you so much. Now, to get into the show, this time of year, you hear it all the time. Thanksgiving turkeys, Christmas hams, so much of the tradition of this time of year is predicated not only on eating, but on the certain foods that we consume. Unfortunately, the staples of many of these holiday meals are, in fact, animals. Now, it's easy and, in fact, tempting to imagine that these animals live great, carefree lives, living their best turkeydom, their best pigdom out there, when, in fact, we know, if we allow ourselves to believe it, we can grasp this, that they don't live good lives. And that's the focus of our show today, ending the era of extreme confinement and the horrors upon animals that come with them. And we have two great guests to address that with us. Representing Animal Wellness Action is Scott Beckstead. He is our Director of Campaigns. After receiving his bachelor's degree from Utah State University and his JD from the University of Utah, Scott worked as an attorney in private practice on the Central Oregon coast before going to work full-time in the animal protection sector. He became known for his special expertise in the field of animal law and has taught that subject at the University of Oregon and Willamette University Law Schools. In 2000, he co-authored Animal Law, the first case book on the subject, and continues to teach animal law, wildlife law, and policy, and endangered, God, this is hard to say, Scott, and Endangered Species Act as an adjunct professor of law at Willamette University. Also with us is Jessica Chipkin. I'm getting to know her for the first time, and we're really grateful she's here. She is the founder and president of Crate Free USA, an organization whose mission is simply to reduce the suffering of animals on factory farms. Founded in 2015, the group believes there's really no difference between cruelty inflicted on a dog, cat, bird, horse, chicken, calf, or pig. They try to create awareness of the extreme and inhumane confinement of hogs, chickens, and cows on factory farms, educate consumers on how to purchase from local sustainable farmers, and they also advocate for legislation to eliminate extreme confinement practices. So what better time of year and what better guests could there be possibly to talk about extreme confinement? So welcome to you both. Jessica, I want to start with you. So thanks for being here. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Yes. And so, I think people have seen the PETA videos. They may have kind of this amorphic awareness of what the animals go through. What do people not know?
It's interesting. I don't think people really know all that much. I think there's an extreme disconnect between what people see in the store, shrink wrapped, and their knowledge of what happens to that animal before it gets to your plate. And I just want to say that was really one of the motivating things that got me the idea to start the organization. Is I had just become aware of things like gestation crates. I was kind of late to the party. That was like 8 years ago. And I was in Walmart, and there was a woman wearing a t-shirt. She worked for a dog rescue. And there was also, I had just learned about an investigation at a Walmart pig supplier about abuses and extreme confinement. And so I'm looking at what she was buying, a piece of pork, and thinking about that, and then looking at her t-shirt, and I'm realizing if she really loves animals, she wouldn't be buying this piece of pork. So I actually, and I followed her out into the parking lot, and I talked to her about it, and she was like I think she was a little bit put off by me, but then I realized like people really, really don't know that much, which just makes our job more important about educating people. And it goes beyond being vegan or vegetarian. I mean, I happen to be vegan, but I really believe very, very strongly that the drive to make life better for these animals, and there's like close to 2 billion animals on factory farms as of now, that everybody has a role in it. And it shouldn't be thought of something that's like the mission of a vegan organization. It should be, there's room for everybody to make change in here. And actually our audience really tends to be more meat eaters, because vegans really aren't part of this problem. And I really believe that a lot of people aren't planning to give up meat. So it's very important that that's our audience. We have to like educate these people about how animals are raised, how they get in touch with local farmers. Do the labels that they see like animal welfare approved or humane certified, which of those labels really mean? Because there's an awful lot of humane washing going on in the industry right now. So I'm losing track of your original question, but there's a lot.
That's okay. I did too. So we're just we're free flow around here. We just do
so
that.
I think, but
you're touching on a couple of
education that needs to be done.
Yeah, you're touching on a couple of things that I want to get to, very, very significant ones. I'll tell you what did it for me before I got heavily involved in animal advocacy. Two things in particular. Thumping, where pig farmers take the piglets who don't seem to be commercially viable and thump them to death, which is, I guess, a euphemism for smashing them onto the ground so they don't have to do anything with them. And then maceration, and I think I'm saying that correctly. It is out of some sort of Kafkaesque nightmare what happens to male baby chicks. And you know this as well as I do, right? So yeah, chickens, eggs, great. But the idea that there are people whose only job is to sit there at a conveyor belt and determine a male chick from its female siblings, and then throw that male chick into a grinder where it is ground alive. That for me really said, holy cow, beyond what we might imagine, there is a world of horror there. And that's not really a question, I suppose, just as a way of addressing it for myself, that I don't think people really understand it.
Yeah, that I've seen that. I mean, I'm aware of that. And thank God there's technology now. I think I read that it was in France or somewhere in the EU that they could determine the sex while the animal is still in an egg. And then they could just, get rid of the egg before the animal's even hatched. So there is that technology now. And I mean, that's another great mission to get involved with, is making sure the US picks up on that technology.
Yeah, we seem to be a little bit late on that. Before we get into humane washing, which is a fascinating subject because it's confusing as hell to me, what these various labels mean when I'm trying to pick out something that might be cruelty-free at the grocery store. But let's talk about cost. I ask about this in a lot of shows that deal with improving lives for animals. We want them to have one bad day, right? Animal Wellness Action, our founder and president, Wayne Pacelli, has never made giving up meat as a dietary staple a sine qua non for, comportment with our issues. But isn't it the case that if we insist on animals having more space, that they're treated better, doesn't that potentially drive up the cost of meat and make it more difficult for people at the lower end of our economic spectrum to eat?
Well, there've been, let's put it this way. I think if you go to a farmer's market and you look at the price of pork or chicken that's raised by local farmers, it is going to be more money. And I think one of the ways to address that, and if you go into the store and you look at the cost of the eggs that are pasture raised and the normal egg, you're going to see a difference. So when that question does come up, and I have a few answers for that. First of all, you don't have to eat meat, animal products every single day. I think that if you look at the overall cost, that in the end will come out equal for you if you reduce your, and this is what I always tell people, reduce your meat intake, reduce your intake of animal products and substitute it with more plant-based or vegetarian, and you'll still get the protein you need, but you'll also be driving down your own costs. So that's part of the solution. The other part of the solution, another part of the solution is that if you talk to farmers that are keeping their animals, like they're adopting group housing methods, that cost you typically is not, I was just talking to an academic about that. That cost is typically not passed on to the retailer. I don't know if the grounding for that, but I just had that conversation with someone. Now the question, another question that I asked myself, if it does cause the cost of the product to go up a little bit, is there some type of, can the retailer absorb that cost in some way too? I mean, a lot of the retailers that we work for are extremely profitable. Can they take a slight hit if that happens to be true? But other things that I've read, and I read the research, it really doesn't drive up the cost. And I think as more producers adopt some of the newest technology to reduce confinement time, that will be the case, that the cost won't go up. And another thing that I want to say that a lot, and this is something that was an important project for us this year, is that a lot of farmers markets now are accepting, well, in Illinois, we call them link and link match SNAP benefits right now. And in Illinois, for instance, not only do a lot of farmers markets now take link benefits, again, our equivalent of SNAP, they also do link match. So I did the math that if somebody who's on food stamps goes into a farmer's market that accepts this program, that the amount of money that they spend on meat and local produce will easily match what they're going to pay in their local grocery store. So that's another trend that we're seeing too. So I think a combination of things, eating less meat can drive down your own costs. And yeah, I mean, that's really the key. And
Gotcha.
really
Let's move over then to humane washing, right? So if I go to the grocery store, what labels should I look for if I really want to make a difference with my pocketbook?
What labels should you look for?
Right. So,
make a difference.
well, right. So if I want to make sure that I buy animals that have as few bad days as possible, that are raised as humanely as possible, forget organic and all this stuff, because we know that organic doesn't mean anything relative to the animal's well-being. What labels can I look for that help me believe that what I'm eating has lived its best life possible, given the fact that I had it killed and I'm going to eat it anyway?
Yeah, animal, and Scott, you might know this too, animal welfare approved, humane certified, not American humane certified, humane certified. There's a list on our website too, if somebody wants to go. I don't have that list in front of me. But I'm kind of, the more I read about this, I'm getting more and more skeptical to what this really means. Does it mean that the animals are outside, or does it mean that the animals are inside, but they're not confined? So I'm a healthy skeptic these days of those things too. For instance, I'll give you a good example. Aldi last year and this year has on their chicken a label called One Health Certified. And, it had, tiny writing on it that said like about sustainably raised and things like that. So you really have to be careful, things like that.
Gotcha. And I want to give your website here. It's cratefreeusa.org. And that's the place where our listeners can go to find the labeling.
The labels, yeah.
Right.
And
Scott,
I also want to say that the ASPCA has a fantastic page called Shop with Your Heart. So they too have a really good list of brands that you could look for. So above and beyond the labels, we also have to remember that a lot of the and again, my focus is more on pork. We have to remember that a lot of the suppliers that are raising the animals correctly, like I'll throw some names out, like Nyman Ranch. I'm not even sure if they have a label on them. So you also have to know the names of the producers. Like if you could go to Nyman Ranch's website and find out where you could buy their products, you could know that the animals are outside. Clemens is another one. Clemens does a lot of Trader Joe's pork. Trader Joe's will have a label that says no crates ever. Clemens does not keep their animals outside, but they've done a really, really good job with group housing, keeping them out of crates. So there's certain brands like Maple Leaf too. I mean, they have, they're largely Canadian, but they sell here too. They've done an excellent job in reducing confinement time to like 7 to 9 days or less. So it's not only a matter of labels, it's a matter of knowing the names of the producers that are really, really doing well.
All right. And I'll put some of those names that you just cited into our show notes, because if you're driving, listening to this podcast, don't write it down while you drive. We love you too. It's not just about the animals. We don't want our listeners to drive into an embankment taking notes from the show. I want to go back to Jessica in a moment to ask about her work relative to Aldi, to Costco, and to what she's doing to help teach children. Before I do that, though, Scott, give us your perspective as Director of Campaigns for Animal Wellness Action, what that organization is doing to help these extremely confined animals.
Well, yeah, I mean, the from an animal welfare perspective, the treatment of food animals has to be considered the number one animal welfare problem in the United States, if not the world, just because of the sheer number of animals that we raise to be consumed in this country. So somewhere from 9 to 10 billion animals a year are raised in this country for food. And so just from the sheer volume alone, how we treat animals that we raise for food has to be considered one of the most, if not the most consequential animal welfare problem of our time. And, the vast majority of animals that are slaughtered for food are raised in intensive confinement systems. That is changing, I believe, and just because I think people are becoming more aware, people are becoming more conscious, people are demanding greater transparency about how their food is produced. But the work that we do at Animal Wellness Action is political. And so we, for example, have been working on the Pigs in Gestation Stalls, or PIGS Act, in Congress, which is a bill that we have had introduced that would basically ban the use of gestation crates to confine mother pigs. And then, of course, we have been very active in defending Prop 12, which is the ballot measure that was passed overwhelmingly by voters in California that banned the intensive confinement of pigs, chickens, and egg-laying hens, and calves used for veal. And the National Pork Producers Council, as well as the Farm Bureau and other what I call big ag groups, brought a lawsuit to challenge Prop 12. And what they objected to was the provision in Prop 12 that said that out-of-state producers that want to sell their products in California have to raise their animals according to the same standards in Prop 12, even though they are somewhere outside of California. We took a very active role in defending that law. We filed an amicus brief with the Supreme Court, and we are still waiting. There was oral arguments several weeks ago, and we are now waiting for the Supreme Court's ruling. But it's an issue that is an absolute priority for Animal Wellness Action, and something that that we will continue to work on in the future. Not just trying to address the law, but also making sure that we are doing work like supporting the things that Jessica's doing, and making sure people understand that they do have a choice in their food decisions.
So Jessica, thank you. And what I like about what we're talking about today and the way we're discussing it is that we do have Animal Wellness Action doing kind of the legislative side. You're putting equal pressure on the consumer side. How is Crate Free USA taking its message to the masses? I know you've got work going on relative to Aldi, to Costco. Tell us about those programs and what you hope will come from them.
Yeah, I mean, the first one we did back in 2018 was Trader Joe's. And everyone gets Trader Joe's and Aldi mixed up. They think it's part of the same company. Many, many years ago, I mean, it does have the same parent company, but they're run by two brothers, and there is a total division between the operations, the people. So they're really operate as separate entities. Trader Joe's, we did have relatively good success with. Because of our work, Trader Joe's now has most of its fresh pork coming from a producer that, like I said, does not use gestation crates, but the pigs still aren't outside. But that was a good change, and they're still updating their products. They have a timeline that they appear to be working from. Aldi has been a difficult campaign. We started the campaign 3 years ago, and our goal is to get them to commit to a timeline to end the use of gestation crates in their supply chain. So way back when we first started the campaign, we had an opportunity to meet with Aldi in their headquarters. They weren't happy about the press that the campaign was getting, and it's one of the, I think there's like 360,000 people have signed that petition, and it keeps growing. And Aldi did make a change, I'll put that in air quotes, on its public animal welfare policy page to say, we expect our suppliers to transition from gestation crates to group housing. But that, the key word, of course, is expect. And expectation could go on in perpetuity. And like I always tell people when I speak, every year I tell my family and friends, I expect to lose 20 pounds. And I've been saying that for like 20 years. Actually, this year I did, but it did go on for a very, very long time. So that phrase was very intentional on their part. And since that time, they've been very, very silent. There's been no response from anything that we do. So that it's been a frustrating experience to get Aldi to commit to making this kind of change.
Do you have a petition on your website? What can our
there's a whole
do?
page. Yeah, we just did a video. There's on our website, there's a page where it says, I think it says take action, and there's a section for Aldi and Costco and Trader Joe. So we just did a video about Aldi too. And another frustrating thing about Aldi also is that they're always touting their vegan inventory, and they win a lot of awards like best vegan grocer. And I always feel, and I try to make people aware that vegans really care about animal welfare. So I kind of invented the term vegan washing, that just because you carry a lot of vegan products doesn't mean that you've committed to change animal welfare policies in your supply chain. So I just hope that vegans who buy from Aldi, because they do have a lot of vegan food, also have to understand that this has nothing to do with animal welfare. Aldi doesn't sell vegan products because it has a high commitment to animal welfare. It's profitable.
You have a mobile app to help people, and I believe it's tied to local farmers.
Yeah. Can I tell you about Costco first?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. So Costco is kind of a different situation. Like a lot of companies like Kroger, McDonald's, about 10 years ago, there was a lot of talk from these companies saying that they would, by 2022, 2023, they were going to transition away from gestation crates for pregnant sows. That's the key word, for pregnant sows. What they didn't include in their statements is that the producers that they buy from, the Smithfields, JBS, et cetera, of the world, they keep pigs in gestation stalls for the first 6 weeks of their pregnancy cycles because they say that's how long they need to determine if they're pregnant. So even these companies that have said by 2022, 2023, will have been totally transitioned to group housing for pregnant sows, they never say that they're kept in crates for the first 6 weeks, which is 1/3 of their pregnancy cycles. So you'll note in all this messaging, it always says pregnant sows, because pregnant pigs, pregnant sows. So we've been trying to call Costco out on the fact that they can't really say that they'll be crate free by a certain year because their big suppliers still keep pigs in crates for the first 6 weeks. So what's interesting though is Costco appears to be making attempts to talk with suppliers who have made advancements in getting the determination of pregnancy down to 9 to 12 days through different types of technologies, through electronic heat detection, radio frequency, different types of ultrasounds. The technology, I hate for this to become a technology decision because for us, it shouldn't be a technical decision, but I think the reality and the logistics of production, it is. But so I applaud Costco for apparently making the attempt to do this. But it just
thank you for saying that. Yeah, thank you for saying that, because it's important to not only wag our fingers at the underperforming companies, but to hold up those who are doing well. So bravo to Costco.
Yeah, no, it's frustrating because everything takes so long.
Right.
Yeah,
you wanted me to ask you about the importance of patience. You said that's one thing that you've really had to learn.
Yeah. I've learned patience from my bird, and I've also learned patience of being an animal welfare activist. This is the hardest thing I've ever had to do, really. It just is like, that expression, it's a marathon, it's not a sprint. It's a marathon. It blows my mind how long it should take. And it really makes me sad that it should take so long, but it really does. We really
one of my favorite quotes, I bring it up on the show from time to time, from Martin Luther King Jr. The moral arc of the universe is long, but it does bend toward justice. Talk about how you're teaching children about this stuff, Jessica. That's really what we need to do, I think, at the end of the day, is raise up good people.
Yeah. It's something that an effort we started before COVID really hit. So COVID kind of made that go away, but we are going to be rebooting that next year. We started going into classrooms, elementary school kids, and we had a really interesting presentation about teaching kids where animals come from. And again, we started with elementary school kids. We plan to expand to middle school and some high school and even college next year. And I really feel like we're educating our future consumers. We're not saying you can't eat animal products. We're saying, you want to make sure you have decisions you can make and your family can make. You can just not eat not eat pork, chicken, and eggs, or you can pay attention to where you're buying it from. So we don't show the insides of gestation crates or, factory farms, but, we have like a video of chickens running around, like chickens need to be outside. Yay, things like that. Just really basic, because these were really young kids. And we have these models that we have of pigs in gestation crates, and it's a stuffed pig, but it just we use that to show like this is how much room the pig has. It can't even turn around, and kids are they're amazed by it. And it interests me how little kids really know. Like one of the first questions we asked is, who knows where eggs come from? The store, so that kind of threw me off. But kids ask amazing questions too. Like I'll always remember this one little boy said, well, can't we just kill them for food after they grow old and die from old age? And I'm thinking, that's an amazing question. That really gave me pause. That was an important question. So kids really are interested in this. And I really, I know we had impact, because one of the teachers told me afterwards that it was lunchtime and this little girl had a chicken salad sandwich and she started to cry because she didn't know where the chicken lived. And I felt bad that the little girl started to cry, but I thought, man, we really made an influence. She's going to go home and talk to her parents. So, I really, now that, well, because COVID ever behind us, but we are going to be scaling that up and getting back into doing that next year. I have fortunate enough to have a volunteer that's a teacher, and I have a few others that are really, really good with kids. So we're kind of updating our presentation, and I'm working with some other organizations to get some classes scheduled. And again, I just want to say, sometimes when you see all the mass murders and mass shootings now, so many of the shooters are really young. They're like teenagers. And a part of me really believes that, I don't know for sure, but I wouldn't be surprised if they also molested animals when they were kids.
Well, no, it's a
I mean, it's a known
statistical fact.
Yeah,
well, that's right.
fact.
Yeah,
right.
And that's a core component, of our animal cruelty enforcement work, right? So we're trying to lobby the Department of Justice to create a special animal crimes unit. And one of the justifications for that is exactly what you pointed out, Jessica, and that is that many times these mass murderers start off with animals. And if we can get the officers out there to identify these young perpetrators, we can potentially prevent casualties at schools, grocery stores, movie theaters, etc. So bully for you for
totally
knowing that.
Yeah, so we want to teach kids, and this is the basic premise. There's really no difference in cruelty, like we have on our website, to a dog, a cat, or a chicken, or a pig. And as we're talking, I had an idea. Like, we have this model of a pig in a gestation crate. I think I should make a note. I also want to do a dog to size in a gestation crate. And, kids would be horrified, just like adults would be, if this is how the dog spends its life, but this is how the pig spends its life. Is there really any difference? So I think that might be a really, I'm always thinking that might be a really good way to show kids there's really no difference. And I think it's such a great age to reach them at.
What have I not asked you that you want to be sure we get to our listeners in this podcast before I go to Scott for a wrap up?
Yeah, well, very briefly, our mobile app, that's one of the first things that my background is technology. And one of the first things that I did when I first started the organization is I wanted to find a way for, we're actually, I was focused on Illinois. So it's called the Illinois Guide to Factory-Free Meat, Dairy, and Eggs. So over the years, we have hundreds and hundreds of local farmers. It's easy to see their information, to buy from them through the app. And we've added in recent years the farmers markets that take link cards. We are adding farm to table restaurants and stores. So we keep adding to it, but it's a free app. You could download it from our website. We've only done it for Illinois. So, other states keep asking, are you going to do it? But it's really, a great tool to helping people. So that's been really important for us too.
Well, if you decide to go to other states, we have a growing list of state directors. Our Kentucky state director, Pam Rogers, is very involved, and we're right next door. We share a border, so consider us interested in learning more about that. Scott, you've heard a lot. You know a lot about this issue. What would you say to help us wrap up our discussion today on the extreme confinement of animals?
Well, thanks, Joseph and Jess. It's been I always learn something new whenever I talk to you.
Thank you.
And I love the work you're doing. I teach a class in animal agriculture law, and the study of factory farming is a huge component of that. And I'm surprised that even law students that are in their 20s and 30s are largely unaware of, how the animals we raise for food are treated. But I do believe that education is fundamentally important, and that's why I love teaching that class, and that's why I'm thrilled to hear about Jessica getting into elementary schools. But I think that the takeaway here is that, this is not an effort to make anyone stop eating animal products, but rather just to educate yourself and get the information that you need to make an informed choice. Because as I said at the beginning of the show, people want more information about how their food is produced. People want to know that animals raised for their food were treated humanely. And so, as long as people are making the decision to consume those animal products, we have an obligation as advocates for those animals to make sure that we let them know that there are choices available. And the number one thing that consumers that consume these animal products can do is to make the decision to stop buying grocery store meat, dairy, and eggs, and instead go to your local farmers market, get to know those producers, look them in the eye, talk to them about how they raise their animals. That to me is the very least that we can do. If we're making the decision to consume these products, that is the very least we can do, so that we are at least contributing to producers that are making the effort to give their animals the best life possible.
And I think too, I want to go back to what Jessica was saying about knowing the manufacturers that do the right thing by their animals, or relatively speaking, do the most right thing possible. Because I think it's unrealistic to ask everybody to go to farmers markets. A lot of them in colder climes are seasonal. It takes far more effort to make a special trip to a farmer's market. I think those of us, and I consider myself part of this group, who like to go to farmers markets and do spend money there, I think that's a great idea. But what I think I'd like us to do, Scott, with InsideAnimalWellnessAction.org, is to also provide a place, as Jessica does with CrateFreeUSA.org, a list of those food manufacturers that do those right things. So I think you have a great point, Scott. I'll thank you for that. Jessica, thank you so much for being on the show. It took us a while to get it together, and it was worth the wait. And I think it's all the more timely because we are gearing up for that Christmas season when so much of the holiday attention is put on, buying and eating Christmas hams. So maybe if you're thinking about buying a Christmas ham, you can start with this holiday season by buying a humanely raised pig. And as I go through gratitudes, I want to say thank you so much to our audience for listening to the Animal Wellness Podcast. Be sure to visit animalwellnessaction.org for all of our news and information, and to sign up for our news alerts. Also on the website, your donations matter. You can find many ways to make us part of your giving experience. You can find us on Facebook and Twitter, and we invite you to subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Podbean, Stitcher, or Spotify. I'm your host, Joseph Grove, and we'll be back soon with another episode of the Animal Wellness Podcast.